Alright, so in this video, we're going to talk about Ada Limon's poetry collection, The Carrying. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ada Limon very, very recently became the new U.S. Poet Laureate. So I had never read her work before, but in honor of her ascension to the highest poetry position in the United States, I bought and read this book. And I'm quite glad that I did, because it's a really, really good book. So, The Carrying, broadly speaking, thematically, it's concerned primarily with questions of life and death and birth. It's concerned with these issues of how we experience the continuity of life, the end of life, etc., etc. And Limon deals with these themes in a lot of different ways, but we also clearly have a coherent collection here. There are some themes that come up repeatedly, or some images, some ideas that come up repeatedly. The poet persona, since a lot of these are written in first person, the poet persona, for instance, has a lot of trouble conceiving a child, and that's a big source of frustration for her. She has some sort of physical disability or injury dealing with her spine and significant pain in her spine. Maybe something like I can't remember the thing that Richard III probably had. Scoliosis. Maybe something like that. We don't know for sure here. The poet persona often talks about sort of observing dead animals and the decomposition of dead animals, but also about living animals and her interactions with that. The poet persona loves gardening, etc., etc. So we get, and the poet persona has a relationship with her partner / husband that becomes a central theme of a lot of these poems. So we have, again, that consistency across many of the poems, where we have a similar, if not the same, speaker of the poems, but also, again, we have a lot of different ways in which these themes are worked through. So I'm going to read to you some of my favorite poems from this collection. I'd actually originally marked a lot more, but in the interests of not just reading the whole book to you, I've selected 6 or so. Yeah, 6 that I really, really liked. So the first collection, the first poem in the collection is called A Name. When Eve walked among the animals and named them, nightingale, red-shouldered hawk, fiddler, crab, fallow deer, I wonder if she ever wanted them to speak back, looked into their wide, wonderful eyes and whisper, name me, name me. So I think we start with the first poem in the collection that gives us this concern with new life, this theme of new life, because even though Eve is obviously not giving birth to these animals, the act of naming is a creative act. And so the fact that this power is assigned to Eve rather than to Adam, which is what the biblical story tells us in Genesis, this idea of almost a mother giving birth to these creatures through the act of naming, this creation of life, is the very first thing that we encounter in the book. And I think it's a brilliant starting place. A little bit later, we have this poem called The Leash. After the birthing of bombs, of forks and fear, the frantic automatic weapons unleashed, the spray of bullets into a crowd holding hands, that brute sky opening in a slate metal maw that swallows only the unsayable in each of us, what's left? Even the hidden nowhere river is poisoned, orange and acidic by a coal mine. How can you not fear humanity, want to lick the creek bottom dry, to suck the deadly water up into your own lungs like venom? Reader, I want to say, don't die. Even when silvery fish after fish comes back belly up, and the country plummets into a crepitating crater of hatred, isn't there still something singing? The truth is, I don't know. But sometimes I swear I hear it, the wound closing like a rusted-over garage door, and I can still move my living limbs into the world without too much pain. Can still marvel at how the dog runs straight toward the pickup trucks breaknecking down the road, because she thinks she loves them, because she's sure, without a doubt, that the loud, roaring things will love her back, her soft, small self alive with desire to share her goddamn enthusiasm, until I yank the leash back to save her because I want her to survive forever. Don't die, I say. May we decide to walk for a bit longer, starlings high and fevered above us, winter coming to lay her cold corpse down upon this little plot of earth. Perhaps we are always hurtling our bodies toward the thing that will obliterate us, begging for love from the speeding passage of time, and so maybe, like the dog obedient at my heels, we can walk together peacefully, at least until the next truck comes. So again, I think here we're getting that fascination with death, but also that fascination with life and the deep intertwining of them. The differing experience there, right? How the speaker of this poem imagines that the dog pursues these trucks out of love, out of a desire for life, a lust for life, and yet for the speaker of the poem, the dog's pursuit of these trucks represents an anxiety about death and an anxiety about loss, the loss of the beloved dog. So we get those two ideas deeply intertwined in this one experience. The next one I want to read to you is called The Vulture and the Body. Now, this is one that really sort of brings up the theme of infertility and the difficulty that the poet persona in this collection so often has with conceiving a child. So this is The Vulture and the Body. On my way to the fertility clinic, I pass 5 dead animals. First a raccoon with all 4 paws to the sky, like he's going to catch whatever bullshit load falls on him next. Then a grown coyote, his golden-furred body soft against the white cement lip of the traffic barrier, trickster no longer, an eye closed to what's coming. Close to the water tower that says, Florence, y'all, which means I'm near Cincinnati, but still in the bluegrass state, and close to my exit I see 3 dead deer, all staggered but together, and I realize as I speed past in my death machine that they are a family. I say something to myself that's between a prayer and a curse. How dare we live on this earth? I want to tell my doctor about how we all hold a duality in our minds, futures entirely different, footloose or forged. I want to tell him how lately it's enough to be reminded that my body is not just my body, but that I'm made of old stars and so's he, and that last Tuesday I sat alone in a car by the post office and just was, for a whole hour, no one knowing how to find me until I got out, the sound of the car door shutting like a gun. Sorry, my cat's screaming. I don't know if that's going to come through on the recording. And mailed letters, all of them saying thank you. But in the clinic, the sonogram wand shows my follicles. He asks if I have any questions and says, things are getting exciting. I want to say, but what about all the dead animals? But he goes quicksilver, and I'm left to pull my panties up like a big girl. Some days there is a violent sister inside of me and a red ladder that wants to go elsewhere. I drive home on the other side of the road, going south now. The white coat has said I'm ready, and I watch as a vulture crosses over me, heading toward the carcasses I haven't properly mourned or even forgiven. What if, instead of carrying a child, I am supposed to carry grief? The great black scavenger flies parallel now, each of us speeding, intently and driven toward what we've been taught to do with death. So again, that theme of the difficulty of conceiving a child and the anxieties, multiple anxieties about life, about death, about personhood, about vitality, etc., that those difficulties raise is really central to that poem. In this next poem, Overpass, again, we have this experience with death, with dead animals particularly. Overpass. The road wasn't as hazardous then, when I'd walk to the steel guardrail, lean my bendy girl body over, and stare at the cold creek water. In a wet spring, the water'd run clear and high, minnows mouthing the sand and silt, a crawdad shadowed by the shore's long reeds. I could stare for hours, something always new in each watery wedge. Bottle top, a man's black boot, a toad. Once a raccoon's carcass, half under the overpass, half out, slowly decayed over months. I'd check on him every day, watching until the white bones of his hand were totally skinless and seemed to reach out toward the sun as it hit the water, showing all 5 of his sweet tensile fingers still clinging. I don't think I worshipped him, his deadness, but I liked the evidence of him, how it felt like a job to daily take note of his shifting into the sand. And so again, what we're getting in this poem that I think is really, really interesting is this experience of transitions, life and death in and as transitions. The passing of time and the way that changes not only life, what this poet persona, what this speaker sees in the water over time changes, but also the experience of death as this raccoon's dead body breaks down. Toward the end of the collection, I think things become a little bit more hopeful, even as it seems like in a lot of the poems, the anxiety increases, the threat of danger increases, and yet I think there's more hopefulness toward the end of the collection. So this is one that I liked, called Instructions on Not Giving Up. More than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbors' almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy-colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains, it's the greening of the trees that really gets to me. When all the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets leave the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath, the leaves come. Patient, plodding a green skin, growing over whatever winter did to us, a return to the strange idea of continuous living despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the tree seems to say, a new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all. And then the last poem I want to read to you, this is a prose poem, but this is another one where we get that tension between anxiety, between the transitions of life and death and loss and the challenges of the body, etc., but also with hope. So a little bit of backstory. The poet persona in this collection, her husband, his father has Alzheimer's, and so there's a number of poems in which there's references to him forgetting things. We've also learned in a previous poem or couple of poems that the speaker's husband has inherited his dead ex-girlfriend's elderly cats. So you get references to those in this poem, prose poem, The Last Drop. You've just left your dad in Virginia with your brother after taking him to the neurologist to confirm that it is, in fact, Alzheimer's. Now you're driving to New York to get your dead ex-girlfriend's cats who need a home, and even though we weren't planning on cats, they're 15 and who's going to take them? And you know them already, and why not give some animals a home even if it's another 20 hours of driving there and back? I tell Manuel about your travels, and he says it's a good premise for a horrible road trip dark comedy movie. And there is something funny about it all. Your father hates cats, but they love him. And I spent a long time envious of your ex-girlfriend's beauty, and now I only miss her and want to love her cats for her. My memoir could be titled, Everything Was Fine Until It Wasn't. My memoir could be titled, I Thought I Wanted a Baby, but all I got was your dead ex-girlfriend's 2 old cats. My memoir could be called, Before the Wedding You Must Suffer a Little. My mother's motto is, Nothing is easy, and I tease her for it, but it's true. Before he left, your dad said he didn't understand the saying, good to the last drop. Does that mean the last drop is bad, he asked. No, I reassured. It means all of it is good. Every single drop of it is good. And I think that's kind of a really beautiful summation of the overall themes of The Carrier.